Hello, we thank you for attending today's webinar introducing SD9. Before we begin, there are a few items everyone should know. The presentation is being recorded and will be available for on-demand viewing after the webinar concludes. Everyone registered today will receive an email with a website address where you can find both the webinar and presentation slides. To maintain the highest audio quality, all attendees are on mute. We'll be taking questions online using the chat function in your GoToWebinar control panel. We'll answer as many questions as we can at the end of the presentations. If you'd like to submit a question, feel free to use the GoToWebinar control panel using the chat function at any time. Okay, on our next slide, I just want to remind everybody that we have some forward-looking statements that we've made today, so just want to let you know about that. And then on our next slide, I'll introduce our speakers. So we have Yossi Pinto, who is the chairman and technical committee chair, presenting, and then the boot functions will be presented by Tadashi Ono, who is the UHS TG co-chair from Panasonic. And then we have the TCG and RPMB functions by Yoni Sternhell, who is the advanced security chair, and he's from SanDisk. Now I'd like to introduce you to our first speaker, Yossi Pinto.
Hello, everybody. I am Yossi Pinto, currently a senior technologist at Western Digital, formerly SanDisk, and I'm serving also as the chairman of the board in the SD Association and also the technical committee there. So I will start with the introduction part. Let's go. Yeah. So. Yeah, last February, the SDA released Part 1 Physical Specification version 9.0, and in this seminar, we will provide an overview of these features introduced with this new version. Before deep diving into the features themselves, since we have here quite a few members which are not SDA members, I would like to give this just a single slide showing some kind of an overview of the SDA activity. SDA was formed in the year 2000, 22 years ago, with the SD cards. And we have today almost 800 members, actually 780 something. We have gained a huge experience with removable cards for the consumer market through all these years. And during all the time, we continuously develop new card types and features meeting market needs. This standard was started at the time, the year 2000, when there were a few other type of cards and form factors in the market. I would say driven by a group of market leaders who joined the organization and dedicated their efforts and great vision, this specification got adopted fast and became actually the de facto removable memory card standard used by almost all the consumer market. In the year 2005, the SDA released the microSD form factor. In fact, we may proudly say that these two small form factors probably have contributed a lot to the digital consumer revolution happened in this century. The microSD was followed by a few more major new versions as shown, ultra high speed versions, and the biggest jump was the SD Express that was recently, like a few years ago, the spec was released. The SD standard is, as I said, continuously evolving, driven by our SDA members, following the market needs and technology evolution, including the recent one, the SD 9.0, which we will talk today. And I can say that the best proof of success for this standard is the fact that billions of SD and micro SD cards were sold, and millions of products support those form factors. So those of you who are not SDA members, I would encourage you to join. This is the place when we develop all the time the next version. And if you want to have the opportunity to have access to what is going on or to influence or what is going to be, so you are welcome to join. So let's go to the SD 9.0. Just I will start with the short background. SD Express card, which were introduced with SD 7.0 and SD 8.0, is a major new addition to the SD standard. The added PCIe NVMe interface, this is what was added. This is the SD Express, which characterized the SD Express. In addition to the legacy SD UHS-1, opens new opportunities for SD cards and products that may enjoy from higher speed, removable memory cards. Among those potential products, we see Chromebooks, drones, surveillance cameras, dash cameras, gaming consoles, VR, and small IoT devices, and more. In parallel, a new movement has started mainly in European community, but spread today also to US and more, recognized sometimes with the slogan "Right to Repair." This is you can see there are also some even images on the right that came with that. This movement is calling for the demand for various serviceability requirements. The general idea is that anyone should get the ability to be able to replace critical components in consumer products. Storage products appear to be one of their targets. Having both above facts in mind, SD cards, and especially those with high performance capability, may replace embedded devices in various applications. What we call a semi-embedded SD card may be considered. SD9 features open such opportunities for SD cards. So as we will see later, it is not the only one. Various security-related applications may gain as well out of it. So what does SD9 include? Here are the three major new features that in fact interact with each other. We have the boot, fast boot and secure boot features give cards the ability to serve as a device boot code memory by using a simple and easy fast boot code uploading process, along with a secured method of providing boot code updates. Okay. TCG storage. This is maybe some of you know that it came from a trusted computing group, a secured storage method defined by trusted computing group, adding the self-encrypted drive capability. This is the main application that is usually used with that. RPMB, which is the replay protected memory block, offers a secured hidden memory accessible only through a secured authentication process, and provides a secure write protect mechanism, secured boot code update, and replay protected security mechanism. TCG and RPMB will be presented in more detail later by Yoni Sternhal. Bottom line, those new features introduced by SD 9.0 open new opportunities for SD cards for cases that cards are more tightly bounded to a specific host. Such cases may usually be either like semi-embedded devices, replacing the soldered embedded memory, like in IoT, Chromebooks, etc., and as a secured memory for OEM applications. Okay, I'll go over that in a moment. So SD cards as semi-embedded solution. This is the first one that I mentioned. These are the two slides that I will show a few examples in which such SD 9.0 features may provide an added value. Let's look at embedded versus removable cards. This is this slide in existing and potential future markets. So in present, in mobile computing, as can be seen in the left, we can see relatively fast embedded devices beside a hard disk or SSDs. Both support boot, TCG, and RPMB. The removable device is usually relatively slow and used mainly for offline storage. And optional fast removable is also available for application running from cards or real-time recording view. But this is the usual case which is shown. On the right side, we see other small devices like mobile phones, gaming, drones, and IoT. And this is a similar case, but without the hard disk or SSD. Now, let's see what may happen in the future. In order to get better serviceability, we may see either eMMC UFS on boards in order to be able to remove them, and maybe new removable form factors, or we can see a solution that is based on SD card, including the boot, self-encryption drive, and RPMB capabilities, with a reduced size and fewer components. A similar solution for the group of applications shown on the right. Okay. So here we can see another opportunity usage of SD 9.0 features, cases in which the cards are also tightly bounded to a specific host. There are various applications like shown here: Chromebooks, gaming, VR goggles, automotive infotainment cards like maps or applications, and more. All of them may enjoy from cards dedicated to being run on a specific host and supplied by the product manufacturers or its contractors. Let's see how it looks like. For example, in the case of small, low-cost mobile computing, in which the secured encrypted drive, like SSD, hard disk, M.2, may be replaced with SD, micro SD Express, or a case on the right side that requires secured removable devices applications like gaming, IRs, and automotive. Special cards operated only with specific hosts may be supplied. So this is on the right side, we see a cases that the card is tightly bounded to the host, to a specific host, using these security features. So let's look at the new SD 9.0 standard. It basically includes the following two documents. Part 1, Physical Specification version 9.0, and Extended Security Addendum version 1.0, which is a new document. On the bottom, you see the structure of all the SD, general SD specification group. In order to enable the new features, the following items were added to the SD infrastructure. 2 new security commands, secure read and secure write. Those commands behave like multiple block read-write, as we can see on the SD state diagram of the command. Those commands allow the host to pass through a security protocol such as TCG, communicating it with the card. As you can see, the structure of the command is very similar to other standards that you may be familiar with. The commands, also the command structure, secure read and secure write, is like in SCSI and is adopted also by other standards, embedded standards. An additional command that was added, which I will talk in the next slide, is command 39, select card partition. Another important infrastructure addition are 3 memory units. The first 2 are 2 boot partitions. These partitions support the boot functionality and will be further explained by Ono-san in a moment. Command 39 is a new command used to switch the access between the 2 partitions. As can be seen on the right, the user area partition can be freely accessed by write-read commands, while the boot partition, the selected one, may be freely read. So in order to write to them, an RPMB authentication is required. So this is how you have a secured boot partition. The third new unit is the RPMB unit. This is a hidden unit that may be accessed, read, or write only after doing RPMB authentication. And with that, I finish the introduction part, and I will transfer to Mr. Tadashi Ono that will further explain the new boot function. So, Ono-san, please.
Yes. Is the screen visible?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Tadashi Ono from Panasonic Connect Company Limited, one of Panasonic Group company. Today, I'm happy to explain technical specifications of a boot feature introduced from SD version 9.0. Here, agenda of today's presentation. First, I'll explain introduction of the boot feature. Second, I'll depict some application examples of boot feature over SD card. Third, I'll describe detailed specifications of boot functions as shown here. And finally, I'll summarize this presentation. Now, I start explanation of the boot feature in details. As I explained, one of the new features of SD 9.0 is boot. Originally, boot means fetching host primary bootloader, that is, boot code, for activating the host after power-up. At present, most hosts usually store their boot code in the non-volatile memory other than the SD card. Now, we introduce a boot feature to the SD card in order to shrink the size of non-volatile memory in the host. By this new feature, an SD card gets useful memory device, especially for IoT or mobile equipment. Boot feature consists of the following 3 functions, that is, boot partitions, fast boot, and boot partition protection by RPMB. These functions, except fast boot, are available over both SD bus and PCI bus. Note that fast boot works only on SD bus. Next, I'll explain some application examples for the boot feature of SD card. One example is a security camera. Security cameras have relied on SD memory cards as their primary storage device for many years. There occurs a requirement for merging storage for both boot code and video data, considering the cost. In addition, since its boot code needs to be updated, SD card is convenient because the update can be executed even in poor radio communication environment. Another example is a drone. Like a security camera, merging or simplifying storage is required to shrink its overall weight and housing. Moreover, when the embedded memory storing boot code is in the drone is destroyed by the accidental fall, the drone will not be used anymore. However, if the boot code is stored in SD card, the drone may revive by replacing the SD card even if crashed. Now, I start the detailed exposition of each boot function. The first function is boot partition. When SD card supports the boot feature, it must have one user area partition and two boot partitions called boot partition 0 and boot partition 1. The size of these two boot partitions shall be the same and up to 32 MB respectively. These partitions are accessible by both SD bus and PCI bus. But how to designate the target partition depends on the bus. For SD bus, host issues newly introduced command 39 to switch the target partition, including the conventional user area partition. The target partition is designated by partition ID and described as a command argument. For PCI bus, on the other hand, the target boot partition is designated by BPID. The BPID is stored to BPR cell register when host intends to read from boot partitions. In case of write, host issues firmware commit command with the targeted BPID. From this page, I explain fast boot, one of key functions in SD 9.0 specification. First, I'll mention the background of necessity of fast boot. Most hosts want to get boot code immediately after power up with minimum operations. Looking back the SD card initialization process, the default bus speed is up to 3.1 MB per second. The reason of this specification comes from the certain establishment of the communication between any host and any card. But the default 3.1 MB per second is quite slow for boot code transmission today. In order to make the boot code transmission speed faster, SDA introduced fastboot sequence for SD card, available of SDR104 bus of UHS-1, whose bus speed is up to 104 MB per second. I'll mention again that this fastboot function is available only on SD bus, not on a PCI bus. This page shows an outline of fastboot function. There are several features in fastboot over SD card. The first point is the signal voltage. Since the default voltage of SD bus signaling is 3.3 volt, but new mechanism needs to be introduced to switch it to 1.8 volt to transmit the code up to 100 or 104 megabytes per second. The second point is tuning process. Since the SD card is removable, host needs to detect appropriate signal sampling point every time because it varies according to the combination of host and card or temperature. In addition, though the tuning process itself has been introduced in UHS specification, it requires the command code command 19 to obtain one tuning block. The tuning process in fastboot should be executed without commas to simplify the specification. The third point is there are two processing modes called CV mode and CA mode. CV mode fastboot starts by a simple operation, that is, driving command line low by the host. CA mode fastboot is triggered by issuing command 0 with a special argument. Host can select one of preferable mode for the fastboot. In this page, CV mode fastboot sequence is illustrated when SDR104 is used. First, as mentioned above, CV mode fastboot is launched by host driving command line low for at least 74 clocks. Second, both host and card switches bus mode to SDR104 during the bus speed mode switching period automatically, as shown here. During this period, the signal voltage is shifted from 3.3 volt to 1.8 volt. Third, after bus speed mode switching, card repeats to send 40 tuning blocks to host. Host executes the tuning process using these tuning blocks. Fourth, host receives the boot code after obtaining exactly 40 tuning blocks. At this time, it is expected that host completes the tuning and can receive the boot code correctly. This page illustrates CA mode fastboot sequence for SDR104 mode. First, in order to apply SDR104, host executes LVS identification to use 1.8 volt signaling from the initialization. Note that LVS stands for low voltage signaling. Refer to the low voltage interface addendum about LVS identification for more details. Second, after completing the LVS identification, host issues command 0 with a non-zero argument to start CA mode fastboot. The argument specifies the bus mode during fastboot. For example, if its value is FC, FC, FC in hexadecimal, it means the bus mode for fastboot is SDR104. Third, a card transmits 40 tuning blocks continuously. And finally, host can fetch the boot code correctly. The operations 3 and 4 are same as those of CV mode. Next topic is the boot partition protection by RPMB, related to the security of the boot feature. Needless to say, boot code is significant data for operating the host equipment. Thus, it must be protected from falsified update or erasure, whether on purpose or not. To realize that, SD card having boot shall support RPMB security and implements the boot partition protection mechanism. As a default, a boot partition protection is disabled, but it is strongly recommended that the boot partition protection makes enabled after boot code is written. Consequently, boot partitions are locked after power up or reset. While boot code partition is locked, write and erase operations are impossible to the boot partition. To make these operations possible, RPMB authentication is required to unlock the partition. After that, write and erase operations gets enabled. Boot partition protection is not effective to read operation. That means read is always allowed regardless of boot partition protection status. Now, let me summarize the main points of today's presentation. First, boot functions for SD card are defined to unify the storage for boot code and user data, such as video or text content. Second, fast boot is introduced to SD card to realize high speed and immediate boot code transmission after power-up. There are two sequences selectable by host preference, and a specific tuning process is introduced to eliminate issuing commands. Finally, boot partition protection mechanism is available to provide security of boot code. Now, I hope this new feature will bring about benefits of end users and expand the SD card market in the future. That's all for my presentation. Thank you for your attention. Now, Yoni will present about TCG and RPMB function.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yoni Sternhell. I'm the chair of the Advanced Security Work Group, the Application Work Group in the SD Association. I work for SanDisk, and I'll give you a presentation for an information on the new security and capabilities in the SD card in the SD 9.0 specification, both for TCG and RPMB. So what is the TCG storage workgroup where the self-encrypted drive specification were developed? The workgroup, the storage workgroup, developed standards for secure computing, including domains like client, enterprise storage, mobile devices, gaming, and more. Among the many specifications they developed, they focus mainly on the self-encrypted drive capabilities through specification like with the name like Opal, Opal Lite, Ruby, and Pirate SSCs, where each specification target different use case or architecture. The protocol on which the self-encrypted graph specification can be communicated and can be implemented is NVMe and other like USB, SCSI, ATA, etc. All of these protocols are defined, and the interaction is defined through a document that is called Storage Interface Interaction Specification, and the new interaction with the SD card was added to that already published document. So what is new in SD 9.0? So we added the support for Ruby SSC. Many know TCG Opal as the main self-encrypted drive standard. Ruby was introduced to provide similar capabilities, but with a more flexible requirement, less footprint, and it is more suitable for application like the SD cards. It, of course, the new functionality in the SD card enables self-encrypted drive capability, and we added new commands for secure read and secure write, which I'll show flow later. We also added another capability in the Ruby SSC, which called TCG MBR Shadow, which I'll explain later. The TCG is supported by any SD card through the SD interface or the newly PCIe NVMe interface in the SD Express card. It is not supported in the SD-UHS-2 cards. So what is self-encrypted drive? The main concept is to encrypt user data at rest. So anytime we plug out this power source from the SD card, the user data is encrypted and secured. So upon write the user data, the user data is encrypted by storage mean, hardware means, and decrypted on read. The encryption and decryption are performed using media encryption key called the MAC, which is generated internally inside the SD card, the SSD or the SD card, and is not transferred over the wire. The TCG Opal family, the one I mentioned before, the Opal and the Ruby SSCs, defines a management interface for a host application to activate, provision, and manage encryption of user data. It also provides a mechanism by which authentication credential can be set by a host application that manages the TCG functionality in the drive in order to enable control of access to user data. So how does the crypto work? When a PIN is set by the user, the authentication credential is set, the device is locked, and no access to user data is possible. Again, it being conducted in a hardware engine, AES engine. So it's not software, encrypted software capabilities. And on the other side, when correct authentication credential or PIN has been supplied to the storage device or to the SD card, the device is unlocked, and the data can be read and can be read and written to and from the device. So anytime the device is without power, there's no access to the encrypted data on the device. So if the device is locked while it's powered off, we need access to the boot record once the power is enabled or initiated. So the TCG specification defined a new feature or a feature that called master boot record shadowing, which provide a way to boot from a drive that is encrypted and locked. It contained an ISV, a pre-authentication boot or a boot code that we call a shadow. It's located and executed by a host software at power on. These ISV pre-authentication code is completely independent of the system main OS and BIOS. So basically, when a system first requests data or there is an access to the drive returns this pre-boot code MBR shadow that is governed by the ISV. The pre-boot code manages the authentication process with both internal and external authorities. So the only communication between the card, the drive, and the external authorities is managed by the ISV code. And only after the appropriate authentication succeeded, the management software unlocks the regular user space, and only then the original boot is being uploaded and executed in like a normal unsecured card. Another great feature introduced in SD 9.0 was the RPMB, as was mentioned before. And it enables several features like the write protect. So the RPMB, what is RPMB? It stores data in an authenticated hidden memory area. And the main purpose is to protect data from replay attack or avoiding unexpected data breach. I have two use cases in the next slide I'll show. It also enables protection for write protected mechanism and secure boot code update. Can only be read and written through successful authenticated read and write access. The data may be overwritten by the host, but can never be erased. It prevents illegal data access or copy with security key SHA-256. So one addition to SD9 is the write protection mechanism, which uses the RPMB. So the RPMB needs to be enabled in order to use that feature. The write protected feature has 4 states. It has write protect, permanent write protect until power cycle, and no write protect. So we define new bits in the CSD register, the write protect until power cycle feature. The RPMB enable card requires secured procedure to transit either to write protect and out, mostly to access the permanent write protect state and the write protect until power cycle state. The secured procedure consists of 3 steps. One is execute RPMB authentication to access RPMB target. And by enable write protection control in the RPMB target, this new 2 CSD register needs to be set. Setting either write protection bit in CSD register make the transition to one of the write protection states mentioned earlier. So the write protection mechanism and the RPMB feature are integrated and connected and required. So what are the main 2 use cases or usages for RPMB? One is software version authentication to prevent a downgrade attack. So the seed or the version number of the software is being securely kept in the RPMB area, and since it's encrypted and secured, there's no way for an attacker to get this information, this version number. So if he provides any other number than that secured version, it will fail. The attempt to downgrade or to change the software will will fail. Another usage is for secure boot. It's in order to prevent undesired or hacked code from running on a device. And that happens with the initial code that is kept in the RPMB. It is located in the SD boot partition, and it must be write protected from malware modifications. So every change to the boot partition required the enabling procedure I described before in the RPMB authentication. So the secured write protect mechanism is primarily used to protect the boot code or other sensitive data on the card from changes or deletion. So these are the main use cases for RPMB, and in the market there are several more that can be elevated for SD card. So the new RPMB data transfer or sequence can be used both to set the management of the RPMB and for data transfer. So the first and up diagram shows RPMB transfer without the data transfer, just the header and settings. And it uses and elevates the new A command 53 and 54. And below, you will see a sequence with a data transfer. And keep in mind that the chunks of data needs to be in 512 byte sectors. So anytime the bulk is not completed, we are adding some padding bytes to maintain those 512 count. Last slide is on the addition to in T10 and that for having a new code for security protocol code. So T10 is technical medium insights, and it's mainly responsible to or it's standardized. One of the specification is for SCSI primary commands, and they define the security protocol code ID for all cards or implementations. So we requested them to add a new code. They assigned E7 as the code for SD association. So we can now use that code for TCG and RPMB integrated in the new command, in the new A command 53 and A command 54. I hope you have some questions for any one of us.
Okay. Onasan, why didn't conventional SD card support boot functions?
Oh, conventional SD cards are mainly used for recording larger size of AV contents generated by cameras or smartphones, and there isn't a strong need to store programs for specific equipment. But to apply SD cards to the IoT market, we thought supporting boot functions was necessary.
Okay. All right. Yossi, why did the STA introduce these specification features now for the SDA interface? I'm sorry, for the interface.
Okay, so you mean while we just introduced SD Express or something? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Well, SD9 actually complements the SD Express cards in addition to the regular standard SD. The NVMe standard supported by SD Express cards support already TCG, RPMB, and boot functions. So this is something which is already supported by the standard, by the NVMe. And now, by adding those features to SD interface, we open new opportunities for SD Express cards that allow usage of those features through either of the interfaces, either the NVMe interface or the SD interface. Also, there is another addition, this fast boot that Ono-san mentioned. The fast boot feature is a hardware-based, and it is supported through the SD interface pad only. So that allows SD Express cards to be fast booted in an automatic manner, and then operate the card functionality through the PCIe NVMe interface. So this is a kind of a new addition to the card, both SD Express and SD.
Okay. Can you tell me about SD Express cards? Do you know why we're not seeing them in the market yet?
Oh, okay. So first, as I said earlier, standards are driven by our members, and SDA define the standards. So usually we cannot comment on introduction to the market. However, it is definitely, I can say that it's definitely expected to be implemented and seen quite soon. The issue is that such adoption, even though it makes use of available technologies like PCIe, NVMe, and SD, it requires hardware updates on the host and card. And such changes usually take more time for the market to adopt. So apparently we saw already a few cards introduced, a few hosts, mainly laptops and readers, already show that they have a SD Express interface. Also, we see a few bridge chips that allow easy SD interface adoption by hosts. We see there in the market also a bridge that supports dual card types like SD Express and UHS-2 for the host side, which can allow smooth transition from UHS-2 to SD Express for the imaging market. So I can say that the fact that a major leading card vendor and chipset vendors and host vendors were actually involved in the spec definition. We're quite optimistic about adoption of this standard, and hopefully we'll see them quite soon in the market. Slowly but surely, I would say.
Great, that's good. I have a question from the attendees. Just a clarification that all the new capabilities of SD9 are about adding security and boot-in functions and not about further speed improvements. Is that correct?
Sorry, who are you asking?
Yossi, could you answer that question?
Sorry, can you repeat? Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, so just a clarification from the audience that all the new capabilities of SD9 are about adding security and boot functions and not about further speed improvements.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, correct. That is correct. No speed improvements with SD 9.0, only the TCG, RPMB, and boot functionality as was described thoroughly earlier.
Okay. And if anybody else from the audience has any questions, feel free to submit them using the chat function on the GoToWebinar panel. Ono-san, there's a question about why are there two types of fast boot modes?
Oh, so in fact, for IoT equipment, main target of SD 9.0, it is important to make host operations prior to fetch the boot code in order to reduce the size of initial operation codes. A CV mode is introduced to reduce the size of initial code stored in the IoT host. On the other hand, Considering the other variation of the application, CA mode has a flexibility to select the bus mode by command 0 argument every time according to application situations. In short, a host can select preferable method of fast boot, and it gives flexibility of host design.
Great, thank you. Just one more question, Ono-san, about the fast boot. So what's the purpose of tuning during the fast boot?
Okay, it's a specific process of a removable SD card. Generally, the faster the bus speed is, the more difficult reading bus data becomes, since the available data period gets shorter. Moreover, in case of removable cards, the available data period varies according to the combination of host card or ambient temperature or other reasons. So tuning method is required every time in case of removable cards.
Thank you, Ono-san. Okay, well, we don't have any more questions. So just remind everybody that after the webinar, you'll receive an email with the link to download the presentations, and you can access the on-demand recording of this webinar. Feel free to share it with your colleagues. There's more information about SD9 available on our website at these areas on the website, as well as SD Express is also available. We have a variety of materials about SD Express. And of course, we have our white papers available for everybody to review at any time on our white paper section of the website. We thank you for attending and wish you a great day. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.